When life just completely falls apart, when the pain feels random and meaningless, where do you even start to look for a way to make sense of it all? Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful framework for navigating suffering, and it's all inspired by a sermon from Pastor Lucinio Barreto. It really all starts with a question like this, one that just has no easy answer. This is that deep, gut-wrenching kind of pain that just defies any simple explanation. It leaves you scrambling. And that's exactly the kind of problem this framework is trying to tackle. So, when you're hit with that kind of tragedy, a tragedy that just makes no sense, where do you go? What model could possibly handle the weight of that? Well, the source material we're exploring today, it proposes one very clear answer. And the answer it gives is pretty direct. Look to the life of Jesus. The argument here is that his life isn't just some historical story, but that it's actually a detailed blueprint for how to understand and endure human suffering. This idea, it's the anchor for everything we're about to talk about. Okay, so let's jump into the first part of this idea, when you suffer like him. This whole section is about the idea that our most personal, most painful struggles, they aren't new. They were actually mirrored in his life first. It's about finding empathy through a shared experience. So the framework starts with a type of pain that is incredibly common, and man, is it sharp. Being misunderstood, or even rejected by your own family. The very people who are supposed to get you the most. And the text points out that Jesus went through this directly. His own relatives literally thought he was crazy. They tried to come and take him away by force. So the point here is that feeling of being an outsider in your own family, there's a precedent for it. Next up, the framework moves on to a whole different kind of hurt, betrayal. And not by some enemy you saw coming, but by someone you trusted, someone in your inner circle. That's a sting that I think most of us can unfortunately recognize. And you have to notice the specific word that Jesus uses here. Even in the middle of being betrayed, he calls Judas friend. According to the sermon, this is so important, it's meant to highlight just how deep that relationship was, which makes the break and the pain that much more intense. And this slide really illustrates that feeling of profound injustice. Just think about it. The crowd had a choice, a healer and a teacher, or a known criminal, a murderer, and they chose the criminal. It's like the ultimate example of being unfairly judged and rejected for someone who is so obviously less worthy. But this framework, it goes deeper than just the pain we get from other people. It also addresses those moments of just deep, crushing sadness, that internal despair that honestly feels like it could physically break you. And listen to this. These are Jesus's own words. He's describing a sorrow so huge, it feels like it could kill him. The framework is suggesting he's not some distant figure who's immune to pain. No, he experienced the absolute rock bottom of human despair. And finally, for this section, we get to the really piercing pain of total abandonment. That feeling that right when you needed them the most, absolutely everyone was gone. At his most critical moment, his closest friends, everyone he had poured his life into, they ran. They just fled. This makes him an expert in what it feels like to be alone, someone who truly understands facing the worst with nobody by your side. Okay, so if part one was all about understanding our own suffering by seeing it in his story, part two is where the whole framework pivots. It's a huge shift from just enduring pain to actively finding purpose by modeling how he responded to the suffering of others. So service in this context, it isn't just about writing a check or volunteering for an hour. It's a fundamental change in how you see the world. It's about taking the empathy you've gained from your own pain and turning it outward into real, deliberate, compassionate action. And this gets broken down into a super practical 4-part model. The argument is that even in the middle of his own suffering, Jesus was doing these things. First, heal the sick, which means actively working to reduce physical pain in the world around you. Second, unite the lonely, intentionally building community and connection. Third, teach the lost, offering some guidance to people who feel totally adrift. And finally, serve others' needs, making that conscious choice to put other people's well-being first. These 4 things are proposed as the way to find purpose right in the middle of your own pain. And that brings us to the third and final part of this framework. This is where it pushes us beyond just trying to copy someone. This is the ultimate example of purpose-driven suffering that the whole sermon has been building toward. This quote, this is really the theological heart of the entire argument. It introduces this idea of substitutionary suffering. And what that means, basically, is the concept that his pain wasn't just an example for us, but it was a payment made on behalf of us. To put it as simply as possible, he took on a punishment he didn't deserve to clear the slate for those who did. And this is presented as the absolute highest form of service, willingly taking on pain for the benefit of someone else. And what's fascinating is where this life of service all kicked off. The sermon points out that his very first public miracle wasn't something dramatic like raising the dead. It was saving a wedding party from running out of wine. The takeaway here is that his purpose began not with confronting death, but with restoring joy. And all of this leads to the final, and maybe the most mind-blowing piece of the whole framework. The goal isn't just to imitate his life or to admire his sacrifice. The sermon presents this verse as a direct command, a pretty shocking claim that his followers are actually meant to surpass his earthly works. So this is where the explainer leaves us. If this framework holds up, if the goal is to move from shared suffering to active service, and then to actually surpass the original model, then the final question isn't just, how do I get through my pain? The question becomes, what purpose will you create from it? What greater things are you being called to do?